Hi, this is Graham Allen, and today we're going to be talking about Carl Palmer and two more Emerson, Lake and Palmer albums, Trilogy and Brainside Surgery. And first of all, this is the poster that I managed to persuade a drum store owner in Liverpool to give me, and he told me the story about playing on the same bill as Carl Palmer when Carl was with Atomic Rooster. So there's the poster from 1984. The actual poster is from 1980, and this is Carl playing Gretsch drums, which he played on the Love Beach album, which I'm going to talk to you about in the near future. So I'm hoping that might stay up. Superstars on Gretsch, Carl Palmer. So I should say that what I'm going to do is talk about pictures at an exhibition along with Welcome Back My Friends to the Show That Never Ends and in concert, because of the live album setting in those, and I think they need a video all of their own because of Carl's playing on the live albums, which I think basically goes up a gear from quite a lot of playing on the studio albums, and that's saying something. So here is Trilogy. Carl is using a Ludwig kit, but it's likely that on some of this, he's now using an Octopus kit, which has got multiple toms. In Carl's case, usually 7 toms in front of him and to the right, and then probably 2 floor toms, snare drum obviously. He'd incorporated the gongs as well. The thing about this album, I feel he really blends well with the music on here. The argument is that he's slightly less bombastic on this album, but I think he complements the music beautifully. A lot of people end up with Trilogy being a favourite Emerson, Lake and Palmer album, and I think because there's a bit of restraint on this album, which sometimes there isn't with ELP. Now, one thing, Carl opens up playing an absolutely killer shuffle groove in the Endless Enigma after some light background percussion, conga style percussion. The thing with that is Keith Emerson was very drawn to Carl at the rehearsal with ELP when they initially got together because of his killer shuffle. So people will know it's a triplet groove, it's a sort of swung groove, has its roots really in kind of jazz time. Carl plays it superbly, it's very, very tight. It's quite busy the way he plays it. We'll come on to talking about what is known as his thwack, which is where he probably puts a small grace note in just before the main offbeat on the snare. He also does that in Tarkus. I spoke to Frank Askew about this a long time ago. Frank is author of the book, or one of the co-authors of the book, The Show That Never Ends, and has worked quite extensively with Carl. And particularly the Tarkus beat, there is a slight grace note put in before the main offbeat on the snare. And I think Carl uses that to great effect with his shuffle groove in things like Fanfare for the Common Man. There's also very subtle kind of orchestral playing on this, Abaddon's Bolero, where he is playing a triplet groove on the snare drum, doesn't bring anything else in, just like a traditional drum bolero. And I kind of think, who else would have been doing that at the time? So just very different styles. Hoedown is a very much 4/4, but kind of hyper groove, a very sort of, it pushes the main theme forward, driving, some intricate stuff on the hi-hat, opening the hi-hat again. He does a drum fill, a very distinctive drum fill intro to the Sheriff. There's some subtle background playing accompanying Greg on From the Beginning. There's a terrific 5/4 groove on Trilogy, which Carl stamps his own sort of signature on. It's played in a slightly unusual way, and reminds me a bit of the Tank style, quite a machine gun-like approach to the drumming. And what I do want to mention most on this is Living Sin. This is an unusual track in ELP's canon. Carl plays this greasy, funky groove. At one point, there is a roll round the tom-toms, and I think that shows that he's incorporated the Octopus kit, which I don't think he's playing on all of this album. And also, there's a single foot triplet in there, which again just shows that he had a very quick right foot. John Bonham, of course, had made the single foot triplet pretty legendary on Good Times, Bad Times in 1968, Led Zeppelin's first album. But Carl played the single foot triplet. You can hear it on the live album, and he also plays it on Living Sin on this. So for me, his drumming on here goes from really great shuffle groove playing to orchestral playing, Abaddon's Bolero, funk, which he doesn't play a lot of, but it's here on Living Sin, odd meter playing, Trilogy, and then just some very great, fully orchestrated playing on Hoedown, dramatic cymbal chokes that he still plays again live now. So I see this as a development. He's gone from all sorts of styles, but very driving, furious playing, to slightly subtler, slightly more laid back playing on this. He comes out as fully formed, fully fledged uber drummer, really. And that's why he was winning so many music polls, things like Melody Maker and Sounds, as #1 drummer. So that's Trilogy. Where do you go from there? Brainside Surgery. And this is often seen as the pinnacle of ELP's catalogue. Carla himself would admit that, I think. His playing on here is really hyperkinetic, I describe it. So Jerusalem, very orchestral, lots of snare work, lots of tom-tom fills, using fully now the large expanded Ludwig kit with the gold and black tom-toms, so very visually arresting the drum kit. We then get some brushes on the Vaudeville Benny the Bouncer track, and then we have really an astonishing percussion score, really, which is Carnival 9. And his playing on there has got lots of these accelerated fills around the kit. It's hyperkinetic. Some lovely jazz playing in the second movement, Carnival 9 Part 2. But I think it just, Carnival 9, the suite, really gives a full account of his playing. And I particularly like, as loads of people will know it, the fill in Carnival 9 Part 1, the second part that was on the opening side of side 2 here. It's the sort of triplet fill that he plays very quickly on the tom-toms and the snare, and he kind of, it feels a bit hurried actually, but that gives it the edge, the excitement. I think a lot of people will know which fill I'm talking about. So we've left out one track, and that is of course Toccata, and that track is counted in 7, and there is a percussion electronic drum solo halfway through it after some fabulous timpani playing with some tubular bells as well. So expanding his range, he's now playing timpani, a lot of bending of the notes with a foot pedal. The percussion solo, which is an electronic percussion solo and has often been talked about, he was triggering electronics, but he was actually triggering them off the drum head. So the tom head was triggering a 9-note sequence. This was developed by Nick Rose, the electronics guy who was working with, and it gives it this sort of 2 minutes of electronic mayhem, sort of Space Invaders, an idea of a kind of war going on, really. So this was the track which sort of stood out and has marked him out as being an innovator using electronic percussion. It didn't last very long. He took it out on tour, but of course didn't go back to it. but it marks him out again as somebody that is trying different things and pulling them off because of his phenomenal technique. You can see some the sort of mini drum solo from Toccata on YouTube. It's the Aquarius program in the UK on BBC or ITV actually, and it shows him playing, triggering the sounds. It's very, very affecting. So this is the last of the Ludwig kits that he will be using. He'll switch to the stainless steel kit, which is a phenomenal sounding and visually stunning looking drum kit. His playing then across these two albums, I think, is some of his absolute best, really hitting a peak, understandably winning loads and loads of awards in the process, and marking him out as somebody who would go on to win the Modern Drummer Hall of Fame in 1989. So that's Carl Palmer, Trilogy and Brainside Surgery. Next, we'll be taking a bit of a sort of a left turn, really, because we're going to be looking at the break that he had in the percussion concerto, going on to his side of works, which I think is incredible, and the later years, but also we're going to be covering the live albums as well. So I hope you enjoyed that, and speak to you soon.